How you doing, Coach?
Doing good. Let's see if we can try this again, huh?
Yes, yes. Hopefully it works this time. For those who don't know, me and Coach Eggerling actually did this interview a couple of days ago. Unfortunately, due to some circumstances, the video didn't save. However, we're back here today on a Sunday, um, doing the same little thing that we did the last time. So I would like to introduce current interim head coach of Southern Connecticut State University football's program, Coach Robert Eggerling, who has been with the team since the 2021 season during COVID up until now as the defensive coordinator. So, Coach, just give us a little rundown about yourself so the people know you.
Yeah, so I'm obviously a Southern Connecticut alum, originally from the Syracuse, New York area. Been coached for about 25 years at every level, Division 1, 2, and 3. Like I said, I've been ecstatic to get my feet back here on campus here. Like I said, about 4 years ago, a little over now, and just excited to kind of moving forward. Each year I get excited a little bit more just because I know what we can and will be able to do.
Right. And just to go straight into it, Coach, just looking on this past season, what were some of the biggest highlights and challenges for the team?
The highlights, like I said, I think the highlights were us competing and, obviously winning and really kind of finishing out the season on a strong note, which we've done the last couple of seasons. And just seeing the guys progress, kind of the highs of the season here. Obviously, we're a 500, sub 500 team, but, obviously some of the tough breaks would be because we've had so many games within a one-score game in a fourth that didn't go our way. Makes it tough, but like I said, some of the highs were the fact that our players come out to practice every day and each week, and they attacked every week as if they were going to have a shot to win the game. Now we get back get it to a point where they expect to win every game as much as it is compete in every game. But that was some of the highs. Like when you have some tough losses like we had over the years, sometimes you find a character of the group, the team, the leaders, and for us to be able to, go back out at week in, week out, battle till the end. Again, win some close ones, lost some close ones. That made it. Those are some of the highlights, regarding like just the atmosphere of what it is to be here. And like I said, and obviously some of the lows were losing some close games that we were winning, vice versa. We had the chance to, and the ball didn't go our way, like the bounce, I should say, and that we'll talk about that throughout. But and then obviously, having some, adversity early on with the head coach kind of being injured a little bit and stuff like that. So that was kind of like I think that kind of was different on everyone's account as we kind of started off the season.
Right, and as you just spoke to, it was a season of close wins, close losses. The ball bouncing either your way or the opponent's way. And just with a lot of highs and lows within the season, there can definitely be a lot of lessons learned. So were there any lessons that you or any players learned and took away from this last season that you think will shape up how the team approaches this coming season coming in the fall?
Yeah, I really think it. I think that really over the last two seasons, really because we've had such a two-season sample, but of a 15 out of the last 20 games have been really decided by score or so in the fourth quarter. Is that you can play with anybody can win, and it doesn't matter that we beat a team and then following week that team lost to someone else. I think that's something early on with young guys, young players. It's like, oh my God, you believe that team won that game or that team lost to that team? It's like the difference was like a game and a half this year to be from first place to fourth place. Like that's how crazy it was. So like the parity in the NE10 conference, and just really growing to understand it doesn't matter who you play. Just because you beat a team last year doesn't mean you're going to beat them this year. Just because we beat that team and then they lost to someone else, are we going to be able to beat them? I think that you got to get out of that mind of like high school in the college. It doesn't matter. Like you're in college now. Every week's a new week. There's matchups. Everyone matches up differently versus different opponents, right? Like there's some things that we match up very well against versus someone else, and I think that's something that I think opened the eyes of our players, whether they're the older upperclassmen to the underclassmen. I think we took that from this year, and even some of the older guys from the previous year, your senior year, of like, okay, hey, we can play with everybody. Now it's just it doesn't matter who we played and how we played last week doesn't really matter what it's going to be for the following week.
Right. And then just one more question, speaking in terms of that, just letting your players know in the locker room, even after the season, after every game, it's just,
I lost your volume.
I'll make sure I edit that.
Hey.
But speaking in towards that, right, I'm sure it was definitely a recurring factor, even after any win or after any loss in the season, just getting the players to stick through it and continue to buy into the program. Were there any specific players, though, who made an unexpected jump or progress, who stepped up during the season that you didn't expect to?
Let's see. I mean, we had some good upperclassmen, obviously, that been through the battles throughout their career. I think, you kind of, now that we wrapped up spring practice, but kind of going back from some of the seniors I think like, a Michael Strachan stepped up and, as a sophomore, really became a leader on the offensive side, and being able to go to him and count on him, James Griffiths as well in his role as an upperclassman. Like I said, a couple guys on the defensive side, I would say really like, some of our corners, Brandon Lewis, Winston Ware, like those guys, were challenged and they kept battling each week. That group right now would probably be our most veteran seasoned group. It would be the corners with the amount of experience they've had over the last 2 years. Even into specials, with Piccarelli. So I think our kicking and even Danny Benzie was a freshman, kicking, kickoff, field goals. Again, I thought over the course of that, he grew with some confidence as well.
Right, and I like what you said. I like how you just highlighted the players from previous years or even some new incoming guys. But especially just speaking towards some of the names that you did bring up, like a Michael Strachan. Me and him had the opportunity to work over the summer together here on Southern's campus doing essay work and whatnot. But I can attest to the work that he put in prior to the season and attest that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. He would be out there every day after we get off of work, probably around 4:30, 5 o'clock. He's right there on the field. He'll be there with Keith. He'll be there with E. Gray, John, a couple other guys on the team, running routes, just going over things on a daily basis, just getting ready for the year. And it paid off for him. Had a tremendous season coming from last year, being a guy that was just trying to learn the ropes, and then coming in this year, turned out to be a breakout player for the team. And somebody else I want to speak to is like a guy like Brandon Lewis, who came in last year as a transfer, kind of was filling out his role, trying to figure out his role on the team, just trying to help out wherever he is now. And looking towards the end of the spring, looks to have made a measurable jumps and seems to be a growing leader on the team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He came in last spring, so kind of getting his feet wet there, learning a little bit, and then obviously in the fall and getting a chance to play throughout the season. I think, again, just got him, more confident and more, comfortable within the, what we're doing schematically on the defense side. Absolutely.
Right. And just to speak towards what I said at the beginning of the interview, it's just that you are now currently the interim head coach. I know that was something going into the season that you didn't expect to happen, especially just taking over part-time as Coach Godak was out with a back injury. But as the season went on and up until now, we now know he's no longer with us. Can you speak to just how was it like, or how did that transition feel to become the interim head coach, especially, during the season, which everybody was getting ready for, everybody was pumped up for. We had a lot of talent coming back. And what was your initial reaction to it?
Oh, well, like I said, it was just trying to really step in and be like, hey, we're here until we know what's going on. We didn't know for sure exactly how Coach was feeling or how long it would take for him to get himself healthy again. Obviously having back surgery is not something you can mess around with, and it was definitely a significant injury on his behalf. So, it's one of those things where, I just was who I was. I was just going to, again, not do anything more than what I needed to do, but just understanding that as an offensive player could come to me now, obviously as well, even though I was currently as a defensive guy, but like, hey, I'm trying to look at the whole program and understand and trying to put them in there and really just kind of keep us structured all throughout fall camp going into week one, and not knowing, like I said, that was going to happen throughout the season or what. But I just felt, I was very appreciative and it meant a lot that a lot of the offensive guys were very complimentary and very like all in with it, which was great, So again, just having that I'd say approval or obviously confidence from the whole team that, hey, we're ready to go, coach. We're with you. Let's go. And it kind of, as we kind of changed a few things up during a training camp and how we ran some practices and just my demeanor, I think, is a little bit different. Everyone's got a different coaching style, So obviously, how it is, but then a lot of the offense guys, they wouldn't have known really what the expectations were at times. So just kind of putting it on everybody. It was one of those things where I just kind of took it. I was like, hey, I'm proud that they felt that I was able to do it and honored to kind of be the head and the voice of the program at that time. And obviously now in this role moving forward as well, something that, it's been a goal of mine, obviously, and that's something I strive for. And, to me, it's worked under a lot of good head coaches over the years. And, you take every little thing you can from each person you work with or work for. And that's what I did, and just kind of created my own way of how I go about leading not only a unit or a position, but now in this case, a team, a program. So I was just very, honored to be in the role. I was thankful that the team rallied around it and was really kind of, gave me that respect back and stuff like that. So I was definitely proud on that part.
Right, and you speak towards your coaching style. I feel like the team being able to rally around you during a time like this speaks towards your coaching style in terms of, you speak about a credit base. I feel like you have a very good credit with the players that were already here, and especially with the guys that we were recruiting. I feel as though that speaking into that, you're always at practice, you're always at the meetings, you're in the building just about as early as anybody, getting a workout in, even before we have one of the practices. So I feel like, just the amount of time that you've put into the program since you've been here is what got the team to rally around you, if you don't disagree.
No, I do. As you know, as a former player for me and obviously position player, like I'm always going to tell the players, I'm never going to ask you to do something I've never done, right? I'm going to push you as hard as I can, because that's what we're here to do. Like I want you to not only get to your potential, but go past your potential. And it doesn't happen without pushing you, So I'm going to push you hard. I'm going to, and I think that's important, but I'm also going to love you hard too. I want to make sure that you guys understand that, again, I am here for you. And I'm not going to put you at risk for anything, but I also understand it takes a lot of hard work to get to where you want to be. Everyone wants to be a player or a starter or an all conference. That just doesn't happen right away, right? And some guys are talented enough where, they have the ability, but you still have to put your work in. You still have to be able to be pushed and be willing to be pushed and be coachable. And I think how I go about my day and how I work. Like I said, I am going to be here. I'm going to push myself. I try to put myself in a position for the guys to understand, hey, I just don't walk in and show up late, or not prepared for a meeting or a practice, And I feel like, as you guys know, as young men, you want that, and that's what I love about us here and on our team is, if they know that I'm ready and I'm pushing it, then they got to be, because then it's I tell them, well, what if I came out with my hands in my pocket and just sat there? I don't think. You guys would be like, what the heck's going on, right? And I always make sure that, hey, you guys got to match, and hey, we're ready to go. As a player, you got to be ready to go, So, and that's where, kind of answer your question from earlier too, with the season this year, where we're at, it makes it a lot easier as a coach when you have players that are willing to work, want to work, and even though we've had a tough loss here, there, a win, close win, to be able to come and prepare to play every week that our players have been here since I've been back is so, complimentary of the tradition and obviously the atmosphere of what the players expect, the expectations are. Because, again, I've been on some winning teams, championship teams, and I've been on some tough teams where we just, really weren't a good football team and losing by, multiple scores that repeatedly, week in, week out. Now that's tough. That's when you see character. You know what I mean? And we showed a lot of character, able to be able to say, okay, rebound, ready to go and play. Might win the next one, close one. We might have lost another tough, close one, but it was a dogfight until the end. So that kind of that's kind of represent, I think, again, the onus of you as a former defense player, our defensive players now as offense. I really want them to take the identity of who I am as a head coach. I think that's a reflection of how we play, is the leadership of who's on top, I
think that's well said. Just to move on to the topic of, this past spring and the offseason, how did spring ball go for the team, and what were some of your main goals that you wanted to get out of this spring?
Yeah, well, again, with the transition and, coaching model wise, and trying to get some guys to be here as much as we can. Our goal was to understand, one of the things we talked back when we go back, I'd say kick it back to the winter, was you always hear the term, hey, you got to learn how to win, right? We talked about you got to learn how not to lose, right? That's something that's really important for us, is we got to learn how not to lose here. And it came back to the close, tough losses, right? So it was like, what's that take? What do we have to do, right? You heard me earlier say, the ball in football doesn't roll, it bounces, right? So for us, we talked about, the ball's either bouncing your way or the opponent's way. And for us, over the last 2-year, sample size, it's bounced the other way, right? So for us, we talked about, take the bounce out of the ball, right? Don't let the bounce dictate whether we're going to win the game or not by a score. So that was something this winter going into spring practice was, right, understand what it's going to take. And what I did a little bit throughout the spring was, not every practice, but, I took probably 4 practices throughout our 15 days of saying, like, okay, we got out to practice. Players didn't know it. And I would put the defense up by 2 scores. So the offense is playing, down, they're behind. And it was kind of like just a mentality right away. And we would go throughout practice and understand, if the offense was clicking or doing well, I would say, hey, you guys are tied it up or you're down 1 score, and really, put some pressure on the defense, so the offense had to move it, and then the defense. Obviously, we flipped that a couple of days, a couple of practices later, we put the opposite, and we put our offense up, and then the defense down, and we used the red zone and that, kind of put our backs to the wall. And then another time we used the scenarios, we're up as a team, we're up 3 scores going into half. So like, hey, man, we're doing great. Everything's clicking. But that's only 1 half, right? You got to play 2 halves. And how are we going to react? So then we, throughout the practice time, whether it was team, skelly, one-on-ones, anything, if either side wasn't doing something well, we turned the ball over, missed drop balls or giving up a broken play defense, then I would automatically, hey, they're up, we're up 2 scores, we're up 1 score, and then we put the kicker involved, and hey, you're going to be the deciding factor, let's put us up back another score. So we're trying to put them in some scenarios that made it more realistic, because that's what we've had to handle the last couple of seasons. So, and I think the kids they were like, wow. And then each practice, every other practice, I would call out 6 to 10 guys of just saying, hey, coaches are watching you today, right? So are you going to act different? Are you going to play differently? You shouldn't, but understand where our eyes are on you, right? One of the things we talk about during the winter and spring is like, there's no fans in the stands. So how are you practicing, right? Everyone wants to play and play hard when there's fans in the stands for the spring game, or once the season comes, it's what are you going to do when no one's watching you? So those are really the things we really try to incorporate and talk about, because, I don't think we really didn't do that in years past. And they just got to be things you got to learn in the winter and spring that are going to help you come, September, October, and for us late in November that we want. So those are some things that we wanted to kind of get by and get through, I should say, through spring practice. And I think one thing we changed, we met every week. We had team meetings every week, and we would show clips, good, bad, and different, teaching moments, talking about why we do certain things, pursuit drills. We did a ball security, 7 or 8 out of the 15 practices, like, just understanding how important the ball is, not to turn it over, and, how to handle things. So, really just kind of change it, some things up, I felt that made it more important for the team to see.
And I like that a lot. I feel like it helps, in senses, build some sort of sense of urgency and integrity within, the team and the players. Just every day being, even if it's just practice months from the season, you already know you're starting the day down, or you have to give a little bit more. It just teaches fourth quarter mentality, and that's something we definitely do need to, continuously instill. I know you instill that
Oh,
every year.
yeah.
So to move on, just in, of course, speaking deeper into spring ball, were there any standout guys from the fall that may have not got their shine that definitely during this time of spring ball and being able to work on the finer tunings of things stood out to you?
Yeah, well, I think as you know, as an old vet that you are, and understanding how the growth of spring practice, as an incoming freshman and stuff, you tell them in the recruiting process, and then even during that first year, you're like, hey, listen, if you're not getting much playing time, it's about spring, and even your redshirt freshman year, sophomore year, like those are big spring practices because we get around anywhere from 550 to 600 something snaps, right? So they're like, that's almost a full season worth of reps. Now, obviously, you're splitting that with other guys, but you may be getting 150 plus real snaps, team, Skelly, inside run, one-on-one. So, like, that's like a quarter of a season, right? So that's a big deal. So, like, for, just on my hand, like, Rakai Petway, man, he was like one of our most improved players from this time last year. Dolmas for one of our wide receivers, slot receivers, Matt Acevedo, an offensive lineman, right? Those three we called them out the day before spring game. Was these three guys were kind of our most improved players from a year ago, and there's some other guys obviously making some strides, but then you had some freshmen that didn't obviously play there in the fall, got a few reps, here and there, but LaRon Robinson, Hugh Wilkinson, like those two guys showed some really flashes of doing some good things or, moving forward. Gabe Copeland, another dimension, big, strong, physical guy. He's playing some linebacker, could play some edge, rush guy. Rakai Petway, like I said, I mentioned him regarding like improving, and Matt Acevedo and Eric Dolmas. We have a lot of guys out there that, you make that big jump from your freshman to sophomore or redshirt freshman to your redshirt sophomore year on the field, and some of those guys really, kind of stepped aside. Tony Powell, I thought, again, had a good spring. He came in last year at this time, so again, another full year offensively there. And then obviously our three quarterbacks, Brandon Jorgensen and Mike Kinnick and Tevin Mazik, those three battling out, getting some reps. That was big because we had to replace a couple good offensive weapons and stuff like that. So, but those guys, I thought made some good improvements. We had a couple other guys who mid-year guys that we brought in that are just still trying to learn it. You saw some promise with them, but still early. As they kind of got their first spring in there. But those are a few guys that came out. Karen Felzon thought ran really, really well this spring. Obviously, we replacing Elijah and John and Manning and Terrence, and so it was good. It was a good overall improvement. I think that was something that we myself as coaches and obviously the players themselves. I think as you feel like you made some major improvements from not even spring practice, but from hey, where I was last August to now. That's a good thing mentally for the guys.
Right, and you speak towards guys like Keith Ridley and Elijah Gray. You have, three quarterbacks, like you said, battling it out, trying to improve every day, and running back room filled with talent with kid like Kieran Falzone or John Amin or even Terrence Robinson. How have those guys been attacking, filling such big shoes that have had tremendous seasons here at Southern and have done tremendous things during their football career here? How are they handling that, some may say, anxiety or pressures on filling those shoes?
Well, I think they, for the running backs, they were ready to play. Like, they all were capable and played throughout the year last year. It's just one of those things I'm a big believer is make it hard for me to take you off the field, right? That's what I told the team this winter and spring. But, hey, we want to play as many guys as we can. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But if you elevate yourself a little bit more, make it hard for us to take you off. And that's what Elijah did the last couple of years, right? And then Keith and Joe on defense and stuff. So, but for, the running backs, now they're just saying, hey, it's our time. Elijah had his great career, but now it's our turn. Each of us have their own strengths and their things that they bring to the table. And I think they'll be able to showcase that. In a quarterback room, it's really now just kind of okay, hey, they were all learning under Keith, kind of learning Coach Weiss's system here now. And they were pushing each other, and I like that. Healthy competition breeds success. So like for them, that was important. But they were definitely coaching each other up, and I think they understand that, hey, we got to grasp certain things of it. We're not going to know it, all of it, or be Keith. We're not him. We're our own person. So they handled it pretty well. There was no, I don't think there was pressure on them. We definitely didn't put it on there. We put pressure on them of what our expectations are of them, not what you have to replace. That's the difference. Those guys had their careers and they're done and over. Now it's next in line, ready to get themselves ready to go.
And to ask that same question towards the defensive side, last year you had one outstanding linebacker in Joe DiGello, who was a part of the defense for a long time and was a standout player in the league for a minute. Now, he was just left by himself after, the linebacker room was deep, being now that right now you have some players that have had a little time on the field, but not too much. How important is it for you to get that room ready for the season?
Yeah, well, like I said, Joe, like yourself, you guys paired together, and he's played a lot of football. He was a good leader. He was a good, kind of the ambassador out in the field for us defensively, knowing putting guys in the right spot as well. But, but we had some guys like Sean Martin. He came in last spring, so he played every game this year. Dominic Barbuto, one of our captains, came in this fall. Played a couple games, but then was injured. Had surgery over the winter, so he was out this spring. But he's a smart, intelligent guy, so he was still helping out coach, and he took from Joe as much as he could even last year. And then Cooper Dayton played under Joe at that same position last year, and Mason Hauser, who again had a good spring this year, growing a little bit. He was injured, last year. So we had some young guys learn under you and your crew, and when Joe had that extra year here, so he did a good job of getting people ready and upholding the, as we call it, LBU room that you guys created. He kept that going this year with these young guys and some of the mid-year guys. So their expectations are hey man, if that's how it was with you and them and Joe and them, he kept that going, so that he did a really good job with that, and guys understanding hey, I know maybe I'm not him, just like the other side of the ball, but they know hey, my job is to put you guys in position to be successful. So I would be able to move him around. The more on our defense, I can, if you're one of the best pass rushers or blitzers, well, guess what? You're probably going to do that more maybe the other guy, because that's what you do really well. So it's my job to put you at different places, right? And the more the better it's going to be for you. But that's what Joe brought, and I think these guys learned under him. And when we played, like I said, we ended up playing around, should we play six linebackers in there throughout the year there? So that was definitely helpful for experience-wise.
That ties into exactly what we're about to go into. How is the team preparing for the upcoming season coming this fall, after this spring, after the lessons learned from last season? What is the motto for this season coming up?
Well, we've just kind of created, our identity is something that I think, we know who we are is when we talk about we are as SC, but we kind of had we put together the Southern standard, of what it is, championship mindset, do what's right, respect all, and toughness, those four kind of key things that, as on defense, we have our 5 elements of a successful play. Well, as a whole scheme and whole structure of our program, those are things that we talked about all winter long, all spring long. One of those 4 correlates to how we're going to practice, how we're going to attack a lifting session, a meeting, and obviously a practice and going into a game. So that's kind of how we kind of prepped ourselves going into this season. And I said that to multiple people throughout this spring. I said, you know what? The way they battled, we got, a long ways to go, but I feel confident enough that, if we had to play a game next week, we could go line up and play. I think the kids are ready to go condition-wise. They did a great job in the weight room. We just tested this past week, and it was outstanding. Where we are physically. We tweaked the lifting program this winter, which was something we needed to do, and to have I don't know. I think we had 6 over 6 guys cleaning over 315, and we're over like 12, 13 guys squatting over 500 something. And so like I think we got more explosive, we got more stronger in base, stuff like that. So the energy, the rejuvenation of being a Southern football player is kind of what I gathered from our leaders and our squad leaders and captains. They feel that. So I think when you create that, and part of it is you got to feel it, right? You got to believe it. It doesn't matter, if you're those kind of don't really have that direction, it's kind of harder to know exactly where you're going to be or how can you be as a team. And I think that's something that they've really saw what we can do, good, bad, and different. We have really good practice. No one's beating you, right? You can have everything. Hey, we don't come to play. Again, we talked about that earlier in the interview, like anybody can beat you, right? And that doesn't matter. So I think that's the mentality, and that they're ready to roll. They're excited to go with, in the direction, even with some uncharted waters that we're at right now, but they're ready to go. That's one of the things we talked to them right in the beginning. Is like the 2025 season is here. Like, regardless of what's going on, you better be looking forward, right, through the windshield, not looking in the rearview mirror. We learned from that, but we got to look forward. And September 13th is going to be here before we know it.
And to speak to that, how important is it to have your team to have that mindset going into the season, especially at this point, where spring ball's over, you're going home to wherever home is, and you have to put in the individual work and put in your integrity behind the scenes. How important is it to have that mindset already instilled from the lifting program in the spring of a Southern football player, and coming to work today and putting on your hard hat and just grinding it out?
Well, yeah, I think, again, I really think it goes back to, like, in our team meeting on Friday, was acknowledging the success they had in the weight room. Like, we always do a high flying owls to the grounded owls. Maybe, hey man, you got to pick it up. But and the flying one was just a weight room atmosphere. Like, that's how it was in testing. So I think, as when you do really well in the weight room, it's like a game. You win, you feel phenomenal, right? Well, when you do have a great testing, performance, you want that again, right? That's the ultimate thing. So, but I think with our captains, our leadership, and our squad leaders, like, hold each other accountable and being in contact all through summer. We have a group that usually stays, but not everyone can stay on campus through summer. But like, if they can know that, hey, you are doing something, or your teammates doing something, like, that's something that they got to think, I got to keep that up too. If they're doing it, I got to hold my end up. And so I think that's something that really started in the last year or two of your last year now. And these guys are like, I'm staying in contact with your position group, maybe your unit, and understand, like, hey, we're counting on you. And I think there's a little sense of true responsibility amongst myself to hold up what we need to do as a team.
Right, and to piggyback off of what you just said, squad leaders, I know coming into last offseason, it was now the second time being reintroduced during this spring. You guys created something in terms of squads or boat crews. How has that proceeded to be efficient and raise more accountability on the team?
Yeah, we try to put some guys in some leadership roles. Not every year is going to be the same. 2 years or 2 seasons, or excuse me, 2 off seasons ago, we chose a few guys underclassmen that we thought these guys are doing some good things. Let's put them in a role. And then this year, we actually, as coaches, let me kick back. When we gave those guys a role, they drafted the teams, right? So that we put them to go pick the groups they wanted. This year, we put it back where we, as coaches, kind of gave out our 6 crew chiefs, and then we picked the teams for them and put it together. Reasoning for that was like, okay, this year, just like anything, when you get recruited to go to a school and you go play for somebody, or when you graduate, you go on a job and you go work with somebody, you don't get to choose technically who you're going to work with in your job where you go. So you got to be able to do what? You better be able to integrate. You better be able to adapt, work amongst each other. So that's kind of what we did this year, just so that, hey, somebody that I might not have very much contact with, because you might be on the other side of the ball, especially in another position, really working and really understanding, and myself as coaches, of giving the squad leaders, right, responsibility. It's not just giving them a name and, hey, you're in charge, and there's nothing to it. You got to be able to teach them. You got to be able to communicate with them. So we would have, like, every 3 weeks, we would meet with them. I'd meet with the squad leaders and captains, one, to find out how things are going. Maybe, hey, something's going on within your team, right, within your group. You have to be able to talk to your group about it and teach them how to do that. So just really, I think it's our job, right? We're teaching a game of life in football, but then obviously now leadership stuff that's going to bring you guys down off the field and eventually into your careers. So I think that's helped. Like I said, locker room this year with what the guys wanted. I mean, as you want to talk about as neat and frisk as I ever seen it. And that's our Southern standard. Like, it's not that hard. Do what's right. Right. And then, we had a couple little blemishes, and all of a sudden guys like, and then guys would end up fixing it for them because it's important. So instead of just not worrying about it, someone took ownership. So I think once the buy-in happens with that, it becomes a second nature of just being able to, like, oh, hey, there's something else on the floor that shouldn't have been there. I'll pick it up, even though it's not mine. I go back to just do what's right. Treat people like you want to be treated. And that kind of carries over to the field when it comes down to the schematics and, trusting a guy in the heat of the battle.
Right, and I'll even say that the buy-in from everybody on the team is probably the highest that I've ever seen or experienced since I've been here for the past 6 years. Going on to that, what are some of the key changes or adjustments that you're planning to make towards the culture that you haven't made already, or just that involves around the team's playing style for this season?
Well, again, I truly believe, a player-led team will win more games. So just really try to give them some ownership within structure of what we are as coaches. I said, I'll be involved. We can help, but it shouldn't be a coach-led team, right? That's not going to win you a lot of games. Players win you games. We as coaches could lose a game, but our job as a coach is to win the close game for the players as well, right? Put them in a position, and they got to believe in that. I'm a big believer in our, for me as in this point, the head coach seat is, a little chaos. Commander has another outstanding solution. So when there's something going on and, the heat of battle, I want them to be able to, hey, whatever decision I make, they're in. They're not second guessing. Oh, yep, we're good. Regardless, good, bad, or different. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, they know we were all in on it. But I want them to feel good. I want to be able to talk to them. Hey, it's 4th and goal. You guys want to go for it? You know what I mean? Like, yep, we're going for the win, coach, not going for the field goal to tie. I want them to feel empowered to be able to say, no, it's us. We're going to take the responsibility of going for the win, and that type of stuff. So, and really just, if you have a standard and you have a few principles you're using, which we do with the Southern Standard, it's my job to be able to uphold it, not only myself, but obviously preach it and show it when it's doing it the right way. And then when it's not, making sure it's calling them out. And I think that's something where, like I said, the crew chiefs and the captains, like when we have our meetings and we have guys who are flying high, you got to tell them why they're flying high. They're doing everything great. If a guy's a grounded owl, why? And that was something that I listened to the team and the guys. So if myself, hey, Rob Eggerling, I was grounded. Why? Well, I was grounded because my locker was not up to par, or, lack of effort on practice or something that lifts. So they know, and then there were some guys always coming in. How did I get there? What can I do to get off that list? I think that's something where I me personally want to make sure that this isn't something that I just do to do, right? It's something we're going to continue to do all the way through in the season. I think our players want it. We got to be more visualizing when it comes to goals, meeting those goals, expectations during the season, right? And from being someone in here, we were previously, like, I'm big on, visualizing and putting stuff, we want to grow in that locker room. The proud tradition that we have here with all of our All-Americans, all of our All-Conference members, playoff appearances, conference championships, like, we want to put some stuff on the boards, put them on the walls. Like, I think that's very important. So when you walk in that locker room and walk out, but you see it all the time. And I know, speaking as a former player, like, you always think to yourself, I would love to be one of those guys on there, right? And if you can strive to do that, and for us to strive to be, perfect, no one's perfect, but if we strive to get there, we're all going to be excellent. And that's a pretty good thing to be. So really that's the biggest thing for me, pushing it going forward, is really upholding those expectations and the standard that we have set myself and the coaches as well, right? You know what I mean? As holding the players accountable, got to hold the coaches, and it starts with me.
Right, and before I ask my last question, I want to bring up what you just spoke about towards the end of all of that. You know, putting up stuff, letting them know that it's been done before and it can be done again. I want to speak to something that you did during winter workouts. You brought in an old NE10 conference championship, specifically the last one that the program has won, and you told the players to close their eyes and just imagine themselves making plays this season, winning games and efforts towards winning another conference championship. How important was that for you to do that, to start this philosophy that you are bringing to the table?
Yeah, like I said, I did that. Maybe it was week 2 of the winter workouts here, and like I said, the coaches didn't know. I just, something I was thinking about I would like to do if I was ever given an opportunity to do that, and obviously this winter it came came to that. So I it was probably maybe our third or fourth run of the winter, and I thought it was important. Like I said, I'm a big visualizing guy. I like to put things out there, and for me, I brought it, and players didn't see it. Obviously, they didn't know, and how would you react, right? I'm a big believer. Hey, man, you feel good, you look good, you play good. Like I want that, but also like, why are you working hard? What are you doing this for? There's got to be something that we're reaching for, as a team. As an individual, we all want certain things, absolutely. But in ultimate, we want to be able to raise that trophy and be able to hold that thing at the end of the season. So I just brought that out there, and while they were closing their eyes, I talked them through a little bit. I'm like, how do you see yourself making a play? What would you do if you scored a touchdown? What would you do if you made a sack or, made an interception or, whatever it may be in your position? All right, now managing yourself, winning that last game, we win a conference championship. What would it look like? And then obviously I just said, open their eyes, and I had the trophy at that point, I think, and I had it up and just said, like, well, it's here. Like, again, goes back to what we did in the beginning and had to reintroduce our players into the history of what Southern football is. And Southern fellas, we've had 7 conference championships here. You know what I mean? Like, it's been done many times. We have 4 playoff appearances. As I'm holding the trophy up, I'm like, this is what we're working in this gym here for today. This is why we'll be outside all winter at times. This is why. And I've been fortunate to win a conference, to be able to hold that and be able to feel what accomplishment that you did, because it takes everybody, and it doesn't matter what your role is, man. Every role is significant in a football program, and so to give them that ownership and kind of that pride back of it, like I said, hey man, proud chest, this is who we are. I didn't think much of it regarding how they were going to take it. I just wanted them to understand, it's been done many times, and but those teams worked hard. There's talent, and a lot of talent can win a few games, win games, but boy, you can win games. Like I said, I've beaten teams as a coach, probably the other team are more talented, but we outcoached them, right? And outplayed them hard. Well, you don't want that to happen when you have the talent. So we were trying to tell them as a coaches, this is what's important here. This is why you're doing it. Every year, and as an older guy, if you kind of go through it year in, year out, and your senior year or last winter workout, you're kind of like, oh yeah, we have our workouts, this is what we do. Well, I think that kind of brought a little bit of a spark to the older guys. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, this is why we are training here. And we're not that far off to be able to hold this thing ourselves. If that was kind of I think from hearing from some of the leadership group, and now you bring that up, I think there was definitely value to it. It's not something I think you do all the time, but it was I just felt the need of where we are, the transition of the program right now. That was something that was important. Understand, it can be done. I said, guys, next year we go 10-0, 8-2, 9-1. I'm not going to be surprised. Are you going to be surprised? I said, people are, hey, what happened? How'd you go from being 500 or below to win a cut? I said, because you guys been working hard, and now we took the bounce out of the ball and we just finished every game, win or losing, winning or losing behind. We came back and won. So that was really my intentions, was just to get them to believe in themselves. Right? I believe in them as coaches. I tell them, when, as your last year, we go on a couple games at the end to win, and we're like, oh man, we let those couple others slide, and it will happen again this year. So I want them to understand, it's there. It's not far away. And if you truly believe it, understand why you're doing this, you'll be able to hold that thing. So that was really the premise of doing that this winter.
Right, and you've spoken towards transitions of the team. So my final and last question would be, what is the overall goal for you and the team and the rest of the coaching staff for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for us, you got to be realistic of understanding, like, okay, am I going to say we're going to go, 15-0, 16-0, win a national championship? Sure, that'd be a level goal. But my expectations, our goal, not only as our players and the coaches, right, is obviously to win all our home games. I want a winning record on Just Now. I think that's something, bring it back to a place that, hey, come in here to Just Now. You never know what you're going to get here. And that will get us back in. If we're fighting within the top 3 of our league, guess what? Like I said earlier, the league's really decided by like a game or so, right, in the last 3 years. That's really been decided. So the difference between the conference championship to the third place team is like a game and a half, not even. So that's our expectations, right? Like that's truly what we want, but we want to have our, obviously, winning record at home, obviously a winning record total, and that if we're in a winning record, I guarantee we'll be in the top 3 fighting for a conference championship. All right, but we got to get back to winning our home games. And next year we only have 4 home games, so to me, hey, you gotta, we want to be 75% or better at home, and we'll be in good shape. That will put us in contentions of being in the top 3 in the conference.
Right. Well, Coach, I want to thank you for coming up here on our platform for us to hear your voice, to hear everything that's been going on with you guys this spring and what's to come this season. With that being said, that's the interview. And again, we would like to thank you for coming out.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much for having me again. And like I said, man, go Owls.
Go Owls. And that's the episode, guys. This has been the Nest at Night podcast with your host, Jalil Watson, and with the premium guest interview of Coach Robert Eggerling, the interim head coach for Southern Connecticut State University. And without further ado, stay in tune for the next episode. And remember, go Owls.